Greetings, I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Book Report. Economics. When you hear that word, it sort of makes most people cringe. You think of bar charts, pie charts, scatter charts, statistical tables, all sorts of numbers that the average person really doesn't understand and, frankly, doesn't want to deal with. But economics are always in the news, and these days, more than usual. And as much as we like to avoid the topic, just like we like to avoid filing our taxes or some other chore that challenges us, we have to deal with economics. We have to deal with how the world works in the world of finance, the world of banking, the world of getting a job, and all sorts of things. And if you run a business, learning how a spreadsheet operates, a profit and loss statement, how to read a balance sheet, all those things, well, they're all components of the world we live in, like it or not. Now, most of us don't have time to go off and get a degree in economics, nor do we want to. But there is a shortcut. There is a way to learn the basics of economics, if not the most advanced theories about it. At the very least, to learn how it is supposed to work, not necessarily how governments or some of our universities think they work. This is a book that's been around for some time, and it's in its 5th edition. And I speak of what is arguably the best book ever written about economics, and certainly one that every American should read, and everybody in a country that has an economy to speak of should read. And even if your country doesn't have an economy, this is a good way to learn how to get one. The book is Basic Economics, A Common Sense Guide to the Economy by Thomas Sowell, arguably one of the most intelligent Americans who has walked our land in the past 100 years. And still is. He's about 95 now. But he's still going strong. An American of African descent who was born in the South and grew up in Harlem. Went on to be probably the best economist since Adam Smith back in the 1700s. And Adam Smith wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations, which is also another must-read. Thomas Sowell spent much of his life as a professor of economics. He taught economics. But one thing I remember reading about is he didn't like the job of teaching. He didn't like grading papers, giving lectures on the same old, and answering questions which, well, any reasonably intelligent student wouldn't have to ask. So he took up writing, probably so that he wouldn't have to spend so much time teaching or helping kids with their homework. And I have to say, as someone who has read many of his books over many decades, I don't think he's ever written a bad one. But this is his magnum opus. This is the book that you really have to read. And you know what? It's actually a lot of fun. Believe it or not, this is a book that will teach you all about how the economy works, how personal finance works, why rent control is a bad idea, and even things like how mountains, physical mountains, will influence a local economy. It's all here. Everything on risk assessment for insurance, how banks should operate, how governments mess things up. It even, at the very last chapter, covers the history of economics. How did this science become a science? And of course, being a teacher still, every section of this book has an extensive list of questions at the back to see to it that you've learned your lessons. Now, this is a very thick book, as I've said. It's about 700 or more pages long. But what I really love about it is you can treat it as a holy text, which means you pick it up, open up to a section, read it, become a little wiser that day. Sowell has such an approachable way of writing. anyone with reasonable intelligence will be able to figure out what's going on. He doesn't have any charts or any pies or any bars or anything like that. He does have numbers, of course, but it's put together in a way the average person can read. If you're a construction worker, if you're someone who works as a short order chef, or you're a banker or a lawyer or another university professor, you'll be able to read this. That's probably why a lot of so-called other schools of economics don't like this man, because he explains how it all really works. At the very beginning of the book, he goes into rent control, which a lot of cities like New York City have, and he shows how it actually hurts the people it's designed to help. Wage price controls, how India operates in certain ways, and how Africa has learned to consolidate farming. It's all here. If you go through this book from beginning to end, you will have a mastery of economics, at least enough so that you can talk your way through a conversation with someone who has a PhD and is in an ivory tower trying to tell the rest of us how to earn a living. It's a very good book, and it's very dangerous, which is why he's been poo-pooed here and there. Of course, he is a free market advocate. Dr. Sowell has, in my opinion, the greatest one-line answer to a question that was ever asked. Some years ago, he was asked by an interviewer, how did you go from being a socialist Marxist back in the 1950s, as many economists were, and got into being a free market libertarian? He had one word as an answer: facts. And that's what's good about this book. It has footnotes for footnotes for footnotes. Everything is referenced. Everything is pointed out. Everything is verifiable. And no one can sit down and read this book and walk away thinking socialism or communism is a good idea, or the government has to run an economy. This book is so good that if you gave it to every high school student, yes, it's good enough for a high school student, and it's easy enough to read for a reasonably educated high school student. I think if you gave this book to them in their freshman year and had a class on economics that lasted all 4 years, by the time they graduated, they would be ready to do anything. Ready to run a business, ready to balance a checkbook for sure, but also be able to understand what's going on in the economy around them. And an educated population is what's needed to make sound economic decisions when it comes to choosing their leaders or backing certain government policies. It's in its 5th edition that came out in December of 2014. I tend to think there won't be a 6th edition because, well, Dr. Sowell is getting there in years, even though he still is being interviewed on current economic situations, especially the tariffs going on right now in the news, the trade wars, they're calling them. He has very interesting insights into that and how it can go well and how it can go badly if things are not done properly. Again, this is a book that you need to have next to your dictionary and next to every sacred text that's in your particular spiritual tradition. This is an important book to have. Get the hardcover. It's in hardcover, it's in electronic book format, it's in CD. It's available. It even has a special electronic edition designed as a textbook, which I have not seen. It costs as much as the hardcover does, but I imagine that's worth having too. So arm yourself with good, solid economic education. I don't think this guy's put together 2 bad sentences in his life, frankly. Most of the quotes I've seen in here, I could turn into memes very easily. Again, the book is Basic Economics, A Common Sense Guide to the Economy by Thomas Sowell, Sowell. He's a guy to check out everywhere. All of his books are recommended, but this one you gotta have. It was last published in December of 2014 by Basic Books, currently in its 5th edition, available everywhere books are sold. You can even get it in CD format if you want, and put it in your car and listen to it while driving across America. It'd be a good way to see the country and learn how to keep it at the same time. That's it for today. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and share. Share with your friends and share with your enemies who probably don't understand basic economics. This way, they might become friends. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. This podcast originates at Substack. The address there is aureliancolumn.substack.com, and you can send me text messages using that platform. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and remember, keep reading. Good day.